Facilities and Utilities meeting to order. I've got just a quorum. Looks like y'all have worn our members out. They are, oh, here comes the very active Rules Chairman.
I'm just your friend sometimes.
Yeah, I love it, and I'm yours as well. We're going to go a little bit out of order. Representative Ballinger is here, and we're going to agree to hear her bill first, House Bill 273. Representative, if you'll just sort of give us the lowdown. This is going to sound familiar to most of you. What was your bill number, Senator Brass?
Mine was 43.
Senator Brass has already forgotten. He's one of those guys that studies, crams the night before the test, and forgets it the next day.
Correction, I studied 5 minutes before.
Okay.
Correction, you never studied.
All right, Representative, let us know what you got.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your going a little bit out of order. Senator Brass has a bill that's very similar to mine. Actually, it's a little bit better than mine. So as a result, I'm not going to be moving forward with my bill at this point.
So you have lost interest in pursuing your bill?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
All right. What do you know what the difference between the two bills are?
He actually has two different options, a 20% referendum or a council vote. Mine only offers a council vote. So as a result, I am not going to move forward with my bill.
All right. Well, let's see whether we are. I have a couple of things in my file that I have been presented by members, and one was a proposed substitute. Was this yours, Senator Harbison?
It was.
Okay. And then you also have it as just an amendment instead of a committee sub. I had other people proposing amendments to this, and so if it's okay with you, what we'll do is proceed with your amendment if you want to be heard on this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I think
Okay.
it was, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, let me get you
An
this.
effort, I believe, to sort of moderate between Senator Brass's position and the interest people at Stoney and the group who had some interest in it. And I thought the idea was to have, he wanted a petition and the 20%, if I'm stating that
Okay,
correctly.
so you leave the 20% option in, which
Yes,
was
sir.
in
Yes,
Senator
sir.
Brass's
And I believe
original
that-
bill.
Yeah, that diverges from
And
his.
you have that as an option or the referendum?
Yes,
Or
sir.
does yours take the referendum out and leave only the 20% option? That's what it appears to do.
The latter, that's what it
Okay,
says.
so we're looking at AM 360860, which is a one-page amendment to House Bill 273. Are you still in favor of that?
Well, I would like to move ahead if that's moderated enough for the author of the bill. I don't want to wreck
Okay.
this part of it. I
Well-
thought that was a compromise that we could reach. and
Right.
Try to help everybody concerned without trying to cut him off. But I'm serious. I don't want to just run him off the track there. I
Okay.
just thought it was really a chance for us to sort of come together and meet halfway.
Okay. The Rules Chairman wants to be heard before we decide.
How'd you know we want to be heard?
He was flapping in the wind.
Well, first
A
off,
wounded duck.
always glad to see our friend from the House, Ms. Ballinger, Representative Chairman Ballinger. And even though I have such great respect for Dr. What's your name again?
You talk
Very
about
good man,
Dr.
Brass.
Yeah, some days he is a doctor.
I know, he plays a good one. So I find it hard to believe that his bill's better than hers. But I'd like to move forward. Now, the other one we can hold on, but I liked what Ed has proposed. And I know Dr. Brass is probably not for it, but I hope that he would continue to move. He won his motion last time, or his bill last time, but see if he'd be open-minded to give us a chance.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Representative Ballinger, do you have anything else to add? Anybody have questions for Representative Ballinger on it? She's made her position clear. Okay. All right. Well, then you can sit in here and watch proceedings.
Thank you.
Or you're free to leave. I have one person signed up, Mr. Mike Griffin from the Georgia Baptist. You know, I wondered if they'd marked the wrong box. I had them in the against box here.
That's funny.
Yeah.
He was drinking in the hall, I saw.
Water, of course.
We want to see if that statement that.
Same thing y'all drinking in here. Same thing Senator Gooch has got there.
Want to see if
Which
the statement.
tells me there is a difference. I don't see y'all in here with a cocktail going through the meetings. That might.
Well, you got any
that-
opinions on HB 273? Share them with us.
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Griffin, Public Affairs Representative of the Georgia Baptist Mission Board. We would like to recommend that we leave the petition requirement in there with no option of not having it, and that if you're going to drop the percentage, that it be at 20%, but that it stay the way the law is right now, and instead of being 35%, it could go to 20%. If you put an option in there that the municipality doesn't have to do a petition drive to get it on the ballot, I would probably say that 99% of the time they're not going to do it. But we think that high community standards, according to what the original state law intended, should stay in the law, and that Georgia Baptist would agree that the minimum ought to be 20%. So you don't
So
typically see me doing
You are
this.
speaking in favor of the proposed Harbison amendment.
If that amendment does not have the option in there, we do agree with it. We think there should not be an option for the local government to not have a petition, and that if they do, that it could be dropped to 20%.
Well, that is what the amendment proposes to do.
Well, that sounds very good to us.
So the Georgia Baptist Convention is going to support an alcohol bill. Y'all got that there? Okay. Yes, sir. As moderated by the Dean and the Senate. All righty.
As a minimum,
You are understood.
as a minimum.
All right. Any members have questions for our good friend Reverend Griffin?
We'd love to see it stay at
We
35%.
know.
You
pleased
know
with you.
that.
Your position's clear. We
Yes, sir.
understand.
We do want to work with you and do what we can and try to maintain the highest standards possible related to the community, because the community is the one that will do this.
All righty. Okay, any other questions? Thank you. There's
Thank you,
nobody
Mr.
else
Chairman.
signed up. Senator Mullis. Yes, sir. If you want to proceed with this bill against the author's recommendation, it is on the table, because once a bill passes the House, it's signed to this committee, then it's in our breast to do what we think. Sometime we've stripped them out totally and put in new legislation, and we don't agree to withdraw that because they don't want to proceed. So it's part of the process.
You know, there are all sorts of needs for good to moderate a piece of legislation. I never want to go against my brethren.
Well, you know, I'm not ever going to go against you. So if you want to take this, now I can turn your microphone on now.
Look, with all due respect, I'd like to make a motion for Senator Ed Harbison's amendment to the bill.
Okay, the motion is a motion do pass
All right,
is what you
as
would wanna-
amended.
Well,
or however
we
you
got
want
to
to.
take up the amendment after the bill.
Okay.
All right, so you would be making a motion do pass LC 364507.
Yes.
Which is a bill as it passed the House. Is there a
Okay.
second to that motion? Senator Harbison, if you want to present your amendment, you're going to need to second that. Okay. All right. All righty. So now it would be appropriate to consider any amendments to this HB 273. I'm just saying now's the time if you want to propose your amendment.
And I move that we accept the amendment. I don't have it in front of me.
All right, that's AM 360860. Takes out the referendum option and reduces 35% to 20%. All right. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Motion? Second by the Rules Chairman. Any discussion of the amendment? Senator Brass, you can certainly be heard now.
I just want to remind everybody, I'm the powerful banking chairman. No, I will, I just want to say I do oppose the amendment. You know, this amendment was tried on the floor, and it did fail. But I certainly respect each member and all the people that they represent, and I respect the process. So, but I do oppose the amendment.
All right, any further discussion on the proposed amendment? Senator Ginn, I'm going to light you up on number 13 over there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Said they, you know, it was 11 years ago that a freshman senator and another couple freshmen heard Sunday sales in the legislature, and we passed it through, and thus far I've not turned a stone yet. For me, it's one of those things that this really comes down to a local control issue for me. And I think that, you know, people get elected in city council or county commissions to make the right decisions for their community. I wouldn't want to see my folks at home elect to go this route, but that's why we elect people to do that in local communities. And I know I love our rules chairman like a brother, said, but I think that people are eligible to make a decision in their community for what's right for each one of them. And I'd ask that he maybe would consider withdrawing his.
Don't mind it, but we're no longer members of the family.
All right, Senator Harbison. you're
May I
recognized.
comment? And when I first came here, the Ten Commandments, one of the tenets of the Ten Commandments was home rule. You don't mess with it. But it seemed to be now applied in a selective amnesia kind of way. And we do that at will, often. We did it the other day. And we do it whenever it's convenient for us to do it. And I would remind us that, you know, it is something that in the eye of the beholder, apparently, at any given time. So I would encourage you to support this and hopefully take it to a situation where it can be moderated and discussed at the rules level before we get to the floor. Thank you, Mr. President.
Other comments? I've got recognized Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Chairman,
You can direct a question to the author, or you can just share your thoughts for a discussion.
just a question, and either for the author or the chairman, could you give a quick overview of, I came in, I'm sorry, that Representative Ballinger had already spoken, and so how does this amendment, kind of explain where we are, and how does this relate to Senator Brass and the bill that we already worked on for
I'm
you?
going to recognize Senator Brass to give you the play-by-play. And Senator Tippins, you came in late as well. You should have in your folder a pink version of House Bill 273. That was the bill brought forward, and now there is a one-page amendment in there that Senator Harbison has put forward that was seconded by Senator Mullis that basically takes out the referendum option but reduces the 35% petition to a 20%. And Senator Brass is going to give you his views now. Senator Brass?
Yeah, Senator Kennedy, if you'll remember, my bill had two parts. It was the city or county could put it on the ballot by local referendum, or it had the percentage being dropped from 35 to 20 of registered voters, and that petition could get it on the ballot as well. Representative Ballinger's bill is simply the local piece. And so what this amendment does is it strikes the local piece and then adds that piece from my bill that reduces that registered voter percentage for the petition from 35 to 20.
And the bill that came out, if I recall this accurately, Senator Brass, gives both options, an either or referendum proposed by the county commission or 20% petition.
Correct.
And she has stated she can live with that version rather than the pink version we're looking at here today. Harbison's narrowing it back down just to a petition, no longer a county ordinance.
So it would have to be 20% under
That's
Senator
correct.
Harbison's.
That's best I can explain, and I think he's laid it out pretty good. Any further discussion? All right, then we're going to vote on the amendment. And to be clear, everybody ought to have this AM 360860, proposed by Senator Harbison. All in favor, raise your hand. Help us count, Cindy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that a finger up over there, Senator, again, or just you out of the family?
I'm going
Okay.
for an amendment, then I'm going to ask to vote down a bit.
Okay, so we got you as a yes. All right, all opposed? Like sign, we got 1, 2, 3 opposed. Senator Tippins, okay, we got 3 opposed to the amendment. So the amendment passes. Now we'll call the question on, I'm going to call it House Bill 273, LC 364507 by committee substitute as amended by AM 360860. Did I accurately state that, any of my Senate research people? Is that close enough? All right, I think I'm going to go with it. Senator Tippins, you're recognized for a question.
I apologize for being late. Let me understand. So now we're voting on a 20% petition
That's correct.
and the local.
No, there's no or any longer.
Okay.
This differs from the version previously passed by the Senate that gave the either or, and now it's just the 20% petition.
Okay.
You want to go from a dry county to a wet county.
I would have voted for it had I understood it. Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All righty. You got the 3 noes.
Can I ask a question for clarification?
Yes,
The amendment that we offered is the language.
that's correct.
It amended House Bill 273, LC 364507. But you have a substitute.
That substitute's not being considered. It was withdrawn.
All right, clear. Thank you.
We're looking at the pink sheet and the one-page white one. All right, so now we're voting for that. All in favor of House Bill 273 by committee substitute as amended here today, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're voting for it now? You were just against it?
I'm voting for the bill because I'm carrying the bill.
Are you? I thought the committee chair got to choose that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We got 9 for, any against? 1, 2, 3 noes. All right, bill passes. Representative Ballinger, who would you like to carry the bill? Okay. Senator Brass, would you like to carry the bill? Senator Brass will be carrying it. Thank you. No, she did. All right.
Did she not do that?
Nope. Next order of business is House Bill 476. Representative Washburn.
She's not interested in the bill. So when it gets back over there, she will.
Welcome back, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Remind us what you got before us. I have got you in my folder as House Bill 476, LC 364701S.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. This bill proposes to move the engineers and the surveyors from under the Secretary of State and put them under their own board for their own administration, et cetera.
All right, you gave us a brief description the other day, and we had a couple of people signed up to speak on it. I'm going to have them speak, but first, does anybody have questions for the author? All right. I had one question for you. I noticed that the version that passed the House was a substitute version. Could you educate us how this changed through the committee or floor process in the House from your originally introduced legislation?
Yes, sir. It was very minor. It had to do with continuing education hours being required either annually or biannually, and that was changed to make it an annual requirement. And so that was the change, and that was a substitute.
People kept telling me it was a minor technical type change, but I never picked up on exactly what it was. Okay, thank you. If you would stay, yes, we do have a question from the President Pro Tem.
Couldn't get this one light up, but
You're lit.
thank you. Representative, thank you for being here. Isn't it true that this bill, even though you'll be moving out of the Secretary of State's office, the money that the Secretary of State's office has been receiving, they will continue to receive, and that the organization is basically taxing itself to fund this move out of the office, and there'll be no fiscal impact?
That is correct. They're raising the fees on themselves. There's no, in fact, the impact is positive to the state.
Positive
I
to the
think
state because-
$650,000 is the estimate, I think.
State's going to get the money but not have to do the administration.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That's a good deal.
Yes, sir.
Would you
Thank
give me the money for a car and not come get the car?
No, sir, not usually, unless I needed your help very badly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Kind of more like paying for the warranty and still paying for the repairs.
What's your point?
I'm sure it's just $1 above sticker price invoice. All right, Miss Ashley Jenkins, if you'll please come in. Representative, you're welcome to stay in the room with us and listen.
Good afternoon, committee. Ashley Jenkins. I'm Director of Government Affairs for ACEC Georgia. We are in favor of this bill. The Professional Engineer and Land Surveyor Board voted on Tuesday unanimously to support this measure, and the Georgia Society of Professional Engineers has also voted unanimously to support this measure. And I'll let Stephen Neff speak to SAMSOG, which represents the land surveyors. We're not reinventing the wheel on anything here. The Real Estate Commission has been out since the 70s, and they operate perfectly fine. We're setting this up exactly like that. And every other southern state does their licensure for engineers this way. So we're not reinventing the wheel on anything. Happy to take any questions, and I ask for your support.
So you're saying no other state is under the auspices of a Secretary of State's office?
There are two, but they have dedicated staff members, whereas we do not. We share an executive director with 5 other boards. We share all staff members, including the AG's office, and investigators with 5 other boards. So for 24,000 people, we have less than 1 dedicated staff.
And you're comfortable letting your licensing fees go to the state of Georgia's general fund or through the Secretary of State's office and you paying your own cost?
Yes, sir.
All right.
No tax dollars involved.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Pro Tem.
I think you clarified something. I misspoke when I said it went to Secretary of State's office. It goes to the general fund.
Okay.
Thank you.
All righty.
So they can buy some nice cars.
Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate you being here. If you'll ask Stephen Neff to
Our
come in.
lunch.
Thank you.
Mopping glow.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Good
committee.
afternoon. Good to have you.
Stephen Neff, representing the Surveying and Mapping Society of Georgia, your land surveyors in the state, and we're just here to support the bill, and we work with the engineers on it. We are significantly less. There's 24,000 of them. There's only about 1,200 of us, so we've shared a board for a long time, we're looking forward to moving forward. We're comfortable with the fees as they are and returning to, and those continue to go to the general fund.
Any questions for Mr. Neff? All right. Well, thank you for being with us.
Thank you all
We
very
appreciate
much.
you. All right. I'll be receptive to a motion to pass House Bill 476. You got, excuse me, who you got it for? Who do you want to ask? We've had them all speak now.
Well, and this goes to legislative council, really.
Oh, okay. We got them here. Sean Marie, what number are you? Is that 7?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think you just moved down to 6. Let's see. Talk in there. Let's see if we can hear you.
Hello.
I got them both. Hello. Fire away, Senator Ginn.
A representative from the National Society of Professional Engineers asked me, when we look at like line 35 and a couple other places in the bill, it talks about a professional engineer. And his question was, does it need to say Georgia in there? Does it need to specify that it's a licensed Georgia professional engineer, or do we need to? Is that already assumed in there, Sean Marie?
I think we can only license people that are going to be practicing in Georgia. It is somewhat confusing, I would think, to the average person because we do refer to the board itself with the name Georgia, but I don't think that we need to add that every place in the bill.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, good catch. All right. So back to, we have a motion to pass House Bill 476, LC 364701S by Senator Albers. Is there a second? And the minority leader seconds. Bipartisan support. Any discussion or proposed amendments? All right, in that case, all in favor, raise your hand. And all opposed. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Representative. Appreciate your time. Moving on down our schedule, I have House Bill 410, Representative Lumsden. All right, we'll note that. Senator Albers will be carrying 476. You good? All right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good to have you with us. If you'll tell us about House Bill 410.
Good to be with you. I bring to you House Bill 410. This is LC 412899. This is a department bill that comes as a request from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The bill does not change anything about law. It simply moves the responsibility for regulating bingo from the GBI to the Secretary of State's office. The GBI, as you well know, is a law enforcement organization tasked with criminal investigations as their primary mission. Secretary of State's role is broad and is largely regulatory. By transferring this responsibility, it will free up some valuable investigative manpower for the GBI. You know, the highly trained investigative manpower of the GBI is better utilized investigating murders, drugs, human trafficking than regulating bingo. That is all the bill does, just transfers the regulatory responsibility from one state agency to another.
Any questions for Chairman Lumsden? I recognize Senator Brass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Lumsden, quick question. Was it ever considered maybe to put bingo down to the locals, like with raffles? If you're going to get a raffle permit, you go to your local sheriff office. Was that ever considered?
In the as it was presented to me, and the director of the GBI, I think, has signed up to address you. He can probably give you some better history on that. But
Gotcha.
I do know that there were a number of options considered, and after those options were considered, this was the one that was deemed to be the best avenue for them to pursue.
Gotcha.
Is bingo regulated by the lottery board?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
You know, we recently had a bill come through here that dealt with lottery and sports betting, et cetera, and I remember seeing that the games that in our Constitution were allowed, bingo was one of them. I just wondered.
I do not know the answer to that. I just know that, historically speaking, most of you have been around long enough. You know that at one point in time, bingo was gambling, and it was an issue. But since that time, the laws have changed. We've tightened up the legislation. It's really a game that's played primarily by AMVETs, VFWs, American Legion, and senior citizens. So it's not the game that it once was, and it really is just a regulatory function.
We legalized it by the Constitution when we passed the lottery. Mm-hmm. It's built in there, but I don't know who regulates it. I don't know.
Chairman, I carried that bill.
Hang on one second. We got a member talking before you got recognized. Senator Gooch.
I said I carried that bill a few years ago on bingo, and
the bingo bill.
It is a GBI.
Okay.
They do all the monitoring.
It just so happens we have the director of the GBI. I guess he's the director, Vic Reynolds, signed up to speak. Anybody else have questions for Chairman Lumsden? All right, thank you. You're welcome to stay in the room and listen. We might think of something.
Thank you,
in
sir.
a minute. Mr. Reynolds, if you'll please come in.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Vic Reynolds. I'm the director of the GBI. I just wanted to come in very briefly and express my support for this bill. I heard a couple of your questions outside. We did, in fact, initially look into the possibility of local legislation. I don't want to speak for my good friends at the Georgia Sheriff's Association, but they weren't in favor of that in my conversation with them, and that's why we turned to another source. The actual regulation of it, Mr. Chairman, that's what we actually do that. We regulate it at the GBI, and so we've got about 110 to 115 license holders right now in the state of Georgia. That's went down a decent amount over the years. It's my understanding. I think at one time before the lottery really took off, it was running around 200 licenses holders a year, and we're down to about 110 to 112 now. So I just wanted to come and appreciate your time. I don't want to take much of your time. I know you're busy. I just wanted to express my support for the bill.
So this has been under your jurisdiction, so to speak, to regulate and handle bingo?
My understanding, Mr. Chair, it's been under the GBI's authority since 1980.
All right. Senator Brass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Reynolds, how many bingo raids would you say y'all average per year?
In going around to the regional offices, I shook the trees, Mr. Senator, and I could not find a single one.
So you're saying there's probably better use of your resources?
Here's what happens. If you apply for a license today, it would go to the GBI headquarters. There's a young lady there. She has a number of functions. This is not I don't want to mislead you. It's not a full-time function.
Thank goodness.
She does it in as one of many of her roles. She will take that application. She'll look at it, make sure you filled out the 2-page report correctly, attached any information about officers in your Legion Club or VFW or whatever it may be. She then sends that, let's say hypothetically it's in the Athens area out of Region 11. She then sends that to the Region 11 GBI office. The SAC there, the special agent in charge, the guy or lady who runs that 10 or 12 county region, takes that application that's been verified by headquarters. He or she then assigns it to an agent. That agent then conducts an investigation. He or she goes and says, all right, that's the building you said you were going to hold bingo in. It's not a liquor store. It's not a beer joint. It's an actual physical building. They verify the people that you've put down as officers of the particular organization. They make sure, they say, okay, the application looks fine, the information looks fine. They then write a report in our GymNet system, just like if you went in there. I went in there to find a murder case or a rape case or an armed robbery case. I could find a bingo investigation. And then they write that report, send it back to headquarters to that young lady. She says, everything's verified. Here's your license. The busy time is probably September, October. If you have a license by the end of October every year, that's a hard date. October 31, you have to renew it with a 2-page report. That renewal comes in, she verifies that information, still looks good, reissues a license as of January 1, and that's basically what we do on bingo cases.
Thank you.
I think we had 9 complaints last year that actually needed some follow-up. Now, we get a lot of complaints. For the last one we got was somebody calling saying they've put Vaseline on the balls so they don't puff up, they don't blow up enough. And in weighing that and looking at a murder investigation, I just think we probably conserve our time a little bit better doing other things.
That sounds like an old Bonita trick.
Yes, sir.
Senator Miller is recognized for a question against the advice of my secretary, Senator Kennedy.
Against the advice of my learned counsel,
Yes, sir.
I want to point out that the minority leader said, Senator Miller, don't touch that.
I'm not saying what area of the state that complaint came out of, but it.
There's been a shift going on in here.
You are great to tolerate us today, but I'm sure you're glad to get this awesome responsibility off the shoulders of the GBI and
Yes, sir.
onto the Secretary of State.
Thank y'all.
All righty. Any further questions? All right. Thank you so much
Thank you
for
so
being
much.
with us, Vic.
See you later.
All right. Any motions would be received? I got a motion from the vice chairman. Oh, he beat you to the punch. Sorry, but you could second it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we do pass LC 412899, House Bill 410.
All right. And we have a second from Senator Anderson.
Bipartisan again.
Any discussion or proposed amendments? Now's your chance. All right, then I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. And all opposed, like sign. It's be unanimous. Did you raise your hand, Senator Kennedy? Yes, sir. Okay, just didn't catch it. All right, we are clicking right along today. I have one bill left. This will be hearing only. I didn't understand it fully. I've had conversations offline with Representative Ridley since then. I've kind of got a better grip on what he's trying to accomplish here. Representative Ridley, if you're out there, come on in. You will notice in your file folders our Senate Research summary of House Bill 392. Underneath that, there is an aerial Google photograph that kind of shows the local issue that has brought this to the good representative's attention. And we're trying to, yep, we did. We got that up on the screen as well. Hopefully people in the hall are able to see that so you can understand what this issue involves. If you will just proceed and describe to us, we have in our folder a pink sheet, LC 364473.
That'd be correct,
your
sir.
bill. If you'll just explain to this committee what you're trying to accomplish here.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members, I appreciate y'all saying this. It's hard to come in behind a conversation about grease balls, but here we are. I couldn't leave that one alone. But anyway, so what you'll see here, what we've got a problem with, especially in these rural areas, for Murray County example, there's about 100-something acres right there. If you look diagonally across from that plot of land right there, it's in the blue, is a school. And then there's another, right on down the road a little bit, there's another high school. It's about 280 acres. Well, the way the current law reads is you can't have any kind of retail that sells alcohol. When I say that, I'm not talking about liquor stores or package stores. I'm talking about a grocery store, a Dollar General store, a convenience store, and it's 200 yards from property line to property line. Not from building to building, not from entrance to entrance, but from property line to property line. So it kind of puts in these rural areas, kind of puts us in a bad spot. In Murray County, if you remember, a few years ago, we put in inland port. Now, you got to remember, my house is about a mile from right there, and we're 6 miles from the Tennessee line. So what we run into is all the trucks are going over into Tennessee and buying fuel. So we're losing all that income off the fuel because the nearest convenience store is about 18 miles in the opposite direction in which they're going. So we run into this. We've got a couple of fuel stops in a grocery store and actually a general dollar store that's wanting to come in kind of in these areas. And with the current law, they can't. So what I done in here is went in and we looked at it and changed it to where it still is 200 yards, but it lets the locals have the decision to move that scale down depending on what's going on. They're the one that actually issues the alcohol license, and so that's what the actual bill does. And I'd answer any questions that I can.
What's the business that is attempting to locate in your blue circled area diagonally across from the school?
We've got two that's interested in that area alone. That's a racetrack and a Quick Trip where we have actual diesel fuel there. Now, just across the road over or just across the line over in Whitfield County, we've got another situation. And you got to remember, the school grounds means anything owned by the schools. So we got a development wanting to go in over there in that area that's a grocery store. Well, across the road is school-owned property that's owned by the school, but no students are there. But it runs in the same situation because the current law says 200 yards from school ground, school building, et cetera. So we got that situation also. But that's what's going there. We've also got a grocery store that's kind of back this side, close to North Murray High School, that's wanting to go in there. They're running in the same situation there. And the school is probably a quarter to a half a mile off the road, but that's where the property line starts. They're wanting to be, they're on down the road a little way, so it's probably a mile and a half from even the school. But since they own the property and where they're locating it, it's less than 200 yards from property line to property line again.
Okay. Now, if you were to measure instead of from the property line to the main entrance of this school, how far would that be? Would it be outside of 200
yes, sir.
yards?
Yes, sir.
I can see that in the pink on this diagram you gave us in the upper right-hand corner. You can see where that goes out or enters from Highway 286.
Yes, sir. That'd be right. And that piece of property right there in the blue, that's 5 acres, and the store would kind of be on the I guess on the left-hand side a little bit, kind of toward the middle. So if you came out and went from entrance to entrance, you're probably talking about 600 yards.
So you wouldn't need this bill if you were measuring from the main entrance of the school?
Yes, sir, that'd be correct.
How about if you measured to the actual building itself? Because apparently what they're measuring is just right across that intersection to where the property line is of the school.
Yes, sir, it goes, that's the current law says property line to property line. You'd be right, it'd just be going just in an angle, the nearest one.
Has anybody measured how far, that's a big plot of land the school's on, how far to the actual building to this subject piece of property?
It would probably, if you went at an angle, it would be probably, it'd still be over 200 yards. It probably wouldn't be as near as far as if you went, if you use the most direct route, then that's how you got to travel by vehicle. But if you went at an angle, even from the corner of the building where they're wanting to put it at to the building there, you're still probably talking about 300 or 400 yards. So you'd still be over the 200. But that's kind of the situation we run in, is the way the current law is. And that's initially when I came in, that's what I called and asked. I said, can we change it entrance to entrance by most direct route? And like we talked about earlier, there's basically what I was told is there is a 2007 court case maybe that solidifies that you got to use from property line to property line, or the way the crow flies. But this whole section is about 90-something years old, so pieces have been added to it over the years, so it gets pretty convoluted in there. And so that's kind of what I was trying to do, is try to clear some of that up and let the locals kind of have that control. If they wanted to move it a little less than that, then they could.
Okay. Committee members have questions for Representative Ridley. Senator Harbison, recognize you for questions. Use that microphone if you can, so people can outside.
Could you explain to me, sir, once again, as the crow flies and under current rules and regulation, how far would that be? I didn't quite get
66 yards.
Okay.
66 if you go by current law.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Other questions? All right. I have one individual signed up, Mike Griffin, to speak. If you would please stick with us.
And I'd like to say, and my friend's Mike, and I love him to death, but this has nothing to do with liquor at all. And I know he's with the Georgia Baptist, Southern Baptist, and I'm Baptist, and I know most Baptists gets it, but the Methodists love this bill.
Come on in, Mike.
I guess the only way I could come in here more is if I ran for Senate and got on the Regulated Industries Committee. Thank you.
You're lucky you're paid by the hour instead of our
I know it.
lofty
That's right.
salaries here.
I tell you, these guys keep me employed. Now, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to address this issue. And I definitely understand what the representative is talking about. And I do understand the practicality of what he's trying to accomplish, because he's now restricted this bill more to the circumstances that he's referring to rather than it being a general, if I'm correct on that.
No,
Or is
you're not
it going to be
correct.
statewide?
No, that's what he's doing. We have a statewide standard now. You got to be more than 200 yards away from a school, which includes the grounds of the school,
Yes, sir.
before you can be licensed to retail package sales.
Yeah.
And he's trying to create an exception where a local government could reduce that distance by ordinance if they chose to.
Right, but is
that
he?
would be applied not just here, but anywhere in the state of Georgia, any local government.
Right, and that's our concern, because a couple of years ago I was dealing with the same issue with the ability of alcohol to be sold closer to college campuses. And then first they were just going to restrict it to a couple of locations, and then last year it gets through, well, finally that's removed. And I just want to say that while we would all agree with the practical side of what he's talking about, sometimes there's unintended consequences of legislation that has impact other places that you wouldn't intend it to be. I pastored for 35 and a half years in the South Georgia and North Georgia. I've dealt with this in communities. I know what I'm talking about as far as understanding how granular this thing can get. I just want to read it's only a sentence or two from the Supreme Court. In 1945, there were a number of court cases in the late 30s after Prohibition was over with, and the state began to set up these regulations to safeguard the communities from any overwhelming influence by the liquor industry or the alcohol industry. This particularly relates to liquor. It does reference beer and wine, but what it does is that the Supreme Court gave the legislative intent on why the legislature set up these kinds of yardage. And here's what it says. The objective when the legislature provided that liquor stores should not be located within 200, now 100 for wine and beer. So it adds in, here's the exception. The principle is basically this. Within 200 yards of a school ground was that there should be no traffic in liquor within specific distance or in specified distance, so that the teachers and pupils should not be subjected to the evil influences connected with liquor traffic. I know this is beer and wine. I'm just saying their point was we're trying to make sure there are protective guidelines that are put down for our communities, because they recognized, again, that this is not Coca-Colas. This is not Mountain Dews that they're selling here. And also, when I used to deal with this in front of county commissioners, I understand, their concerns, but the reason they leave the property in there, and you've had court rulings on this, is because children just don't stay inside the building. And also, children walk to school. And I know we're talking about a rural area. They're probably going to they might see more deer and rabbits than they do people when they get there. But that's not true everywhere else. And they're going to be walking through this. And then secondly, if we're going to use the local control principle, which sometimes we use it when it favors us and sometimes we don't, and I'm sure you've seen me do the same thing, then let's really let there be local control and then allow local municipalities to extend the distances if they wanted to, up to a certain degree. If we really believe in real local control, you can not only get it closer, but you could reasonably move it further in some communities who feel like it needs to be further because of they're in a more compacted area possibly. I'm just saying I could, again, I don't want to find myself supporting 2 alcohol bills, but the point is, if it was a real local control issue, then let's let it really be local control, and that you can actually extend it in cases as well if we're going to do that. I asked y'all last year on the home delivery to let it be a local control, and I didn't get it. I just said, don't make it a law that can go ahead and be enacted without the local municipalities saying we agree. I ain't talking about a referendum, and I couldn't get any support for it to be local control. We just went ahead and made that a state law. So I'm just saying, I'm not trying to get in a grind with you about that issue. I'm just saying it just seems like sometimes it is, sometimes it ain't. I'm just saying if we're going to go local control, I think there needs to be some abilities also for local community to say we want it to be a little more stringent sometimes. But I'm just concerned that we start with this and then we come back like we did last year and they added in there, and lo and behold, that's not just for colleges in a couple of areas. It's for all colleges now, and it's been reduced. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid next time we'll be in here debating this over churches, because it just seems like it's a Barney Fife moment on speeding. Give them 30, go 35, 35 to go 40, give them 40, go 45. It just seems like we're just continuing to lessen these laws, and alcohol is still a very dangerous thing that we need to be concerned about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've got a question for you from Pro Tem. He's back on good behavior.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mike, for being here, and
Yes.
thank you, the sponsor, for being here as well. The proposal, as I understand it, it wouldn't be necessarily, is this for a beer store? Maybe I don't understand it. Or is it for a convenience store that might sell beer?
It's off premises consumption, I believe.
Off premises consumption. So it'd be, would that include, maybe the sponsor could nod or something since he's not at the podium. Is that for beer and liquor, a beer and wine store, or a convenience store that might sell beer and wine? Convenience grocery store. So you could be talking about a Publix or a Kroger.
I think it's any business that sells.
I don't know. I'm not
off premise
following that.
All right. We'll get the author back up. I will say one comment you made. Nothing in this law prohibits local governments from having a further extension. This is a minimum. They can't have one less unless this bill passes. The current law does not mandate local governments can't have larger buffers if they wanted to.
If that's true, I was not aware of that they could make the distance further. I'm pretty sure in state law they made it mandatory that you have to maintain these types of distances. So, yeah, it can be further. I'm just saying they can't, you don't have to always have one this close to the school. You can always have one further away, but they can't mandatory it, the minimum any more than what the state has.
All right.
The local governments can't change the minimum.
Okay. Thank you. And
Yes,
we do hear you.
And I
You
appreciate
speak
it.
to us. I know you don't always prevail and get your way, but we know that you're speaking not only for yourself and your client, but for a large portion of Georgians that are worried about alcohol being sold close to their school children.
Right, and
Thank
it's
you.
not that, like this particular bill might do it, sometimes it's what it leads to in another instance, and it just keeps like we're just getting closer and closer, and anyway,
All right.
it is what it is.
Thank you for being with us. Representative Ridley, if you'll come back up so
Thank
we
you.
can address a couple of questions with you.
Appreciate it, and I appreciate this representative, we get along great. It's a principal issue for us. Thank you.
Mr. Pro Tem, if you want to address your question to Representative Ridley, I think he might be appropriate as to what this applies to: wine, beer, liquor, or all three of them.
No, sir. So back to your question. So this only is beer and wine off premises. So you're talking about a convenience store, grocery store, or like maybe a Dollar General store now, they're starting to sell alcohol. Your package stores would be more your liquor and that kind of stuff, and this does not apply at all any way to that. It's only to beer and wine sales, retail sales.
Convenience and grocery.
Yes,
that
sir.
might include beer and wine.
Yes, sir. That'd be correct. And you know, and I agree with Mike. I mean, he talks about local control, and this is if you wanted to just let it go, I'd be all for, hey, let's just let the locals have it since they issue those. But the problem there is then you run into not having any guardrails at all, and then you're letting them put liquor stores anywhere they want to. I mean, you're opening it up to a whole big thing. He talks about unintended consequences, and I think that'd be something that we'd really run into. But I think if the local governments are already issuing the alcohol license, they know better in that situation to where the stores want to go on the backside of 400 acres versus right across the road from a school. And so that kind of gives them a little bit of leeway to make that decision. And that's kind of what I was wanting to do in this bill.
Okay. Other questions? All right. Because of the complexity of this and statewide implications, we're having a hearing only today.
Sure.
I want to ask Sean Marie and Catherine to stay with me for Senate Research and Legislative Council to see if there's a way to further sort of restrict this to make it apply just to this type of situation. I don't know if it can be done. It was the Savannah College of Art and Design that you're recalling, or somebody did, I guess Mike did recently, that we tried to carve it out to be just specific and found that that was near impossible to do.
Yes, sir.
Just a little history. Senator Ginn left, but if you guys want to look on page 2 of this bill, starting at line 21 through 30, that's pretty funky language for a statewide bill. That was a separate bill that was intended for I think it was a CVS pharmacy in Athens, Georgia, that was going to be diagonally across from the arches, and it unfortunately was within the 100 yards, 200 yard limit by this bill, and it was very craftily drawn that it would only apply to that one location or something really similar.
Yes, sir.
That's why this crazy language is in here, that you had to be 10,000 square feet, 85% of it had to be for food and not alcohol, et cetera. The end of that story, Senator Ginn supported it, I opposed the bill, is that the bill passed, obviously it's in the code, and they never built the store, or they don't sell alcohol there anyway. So it's interesting how we can overthink things, but there's a reason that we have this statewide, and I'm surprised Senator Tippins hadn't spoken up, being an old school board members. I think that we think for our communities it's best that school-age children not be exposed to the sale of alcohol in close proximity to their school.
And I agree with you 100%. I got 3 young kids, but most days I pick them up. They go to a different school, not close to there, but the first place we go is in the Quick Trip or somewhere like that to get a donut or get slushies or something like that. And they sell alcohol in there, but you really don't even notice it because they kind of got it over in the corner. And that's what we're talking about in this situation. This is kind of an opportunity for a rural area in this state to stop losing tax revenue over into another state. These trucks are using our roads. We need to be getting revenue off of them when they buy fuel, so this is actually more. There's more places around here than like this than you think. But
I'm going to try to work with Legislative Council and Senate Research to see if there's a way we can further refine this so that it's not more broadly applied than we think. You've been persuasive with me that the actual building here is 400 or 500 yards away. The entrance to the school is over 600, so it's almost just the problem being that it's such a large piece of property that the school's located on, it has some almost unintended consequences. We found that in the SCAD case last year. They got their campuses spread out all throughout Savannah.
Right.
And it made it very difficult for anybody to sell alcohol in downtown Savannah, given this law. Same thing in Athens. The University of Georgia's got multiple buildings and facilities. The med school is a couple miles away from the main campus of the vet school, and you end up being a little overbroad sometime if you're not careful. But I'll see what we can do. Senator Gooch.
Just to make an observation, it looks like that intersection's at a prime location in town, two major state routes.
Yes, sir.
Not sure why the school would have picked that. That's probably the most expensive real estate in the area. They've also, by doing so, they've eliminated all three of the other corners from being developed because of this law.
Yes, sir.
So the community's at a disadvantage. Maybe the answer would be if that property's in a commercially zoned district, then you would have this reduction in the setbacks. That way the school should know in advance before they buy a piece of
Yes, sir.
property like
And
this.
if you look across the road there, I guess to the right of that blue, there's a little building right there, and that was a convenience store.
Yeah.
And they did sell beer there. Of course, they were grandfathered in. And then back in April, when we had the tornado that came through, tore everything up, we lost 2 stores up there then. Well, the way the law is written, unless they rebuild in that area and that they can't be grandfathered in, well, those people took the money in the older stores, so they kind of took the insurance and left. So that's kind of what's left us in a bind up there, was after tornadoes come through and tore both of those down.
If I could follow up just to
go right ahead.
One last thing, just for informational purposes. When your argument's about the trucks filling up with fuel, you're talking about cargo trucks, big tractor and trailers? Or?
Yes, sir.
So we have what's called the International Fuel Tax Agreement. So if you buy gas any state in the southeast or wherever, the gas tax gets distributed throughout those states that truck drives in. So we're not losing motor fuel tax from those trucks.
Yes, sir.
Because regardless of where they deliver, they have to pay that tax to the state. So, but other revenues.
Yes, sir. I mean, I buy probably 500 gallons or more a week for my equipment, and I run right across over in Tennessee.
That's because it's lower gas tax up there.
Yes, sir. Well, there's nowhere else to go unless I go 20 miles back the opposite way.
Right, but the big trucks are paying the gas tax to all of us anyway,
Oh,
regardless
okay.
where they load up.
Well, they might buy it.
They might buy 2,000 gallons, or it doesn't matter. It's based on the mileage. They have to report their mileage every month. You, as a business person, don't, because you don't have the sticker.
Okay.
You're not running over across other states.
I got you. Okay,
Just for
thank you.
clarification.
All right. Recognize Senator Kennedy for a question.
Representative Ridley, just a question. What is the size of the lot that you're talking about?
That one right there is 5 acres even.
5, okay.
Which one is that, the Quick Trip lot or the school lot?
That's the Quick Trip. No, the school lot's 135 acres. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And you're saying the proposed location of a Quick Trip or a likely location for a facility like that would be, did you say 300 to 400 yards from the school boundary then at that point?
Well, if you go from property line to property line, it's 66 yards if you roll it from that corner to the property line currently.
Yeah.
If you put the actual where they're wanting to put the store, and you go from that entrance and come out and turn and go to the school that way, it's about 600 yards to the entrance of the school, and it's probably 400 from building to building. I'd say that's just kind of giving a guess.
Okay.
All right. Sean Marie. I'm looking at line 27, because that was built in the carve-out we tried to do in Athens. And it made it be a 10,000 square foot facility. I remember our senator from Ocilla had an economic development project for a Walmart down there. And I don't know if this cut them in or not, but it was for a larger store, I think, than a Quick Trip. Do you think by reducing that 10,000 square feet, it might accommodate this? Representative Ridley, you know how big the Quick Trip would be? How many square feet?
No, sir, I really don't, because they're different sizes too.
It's gonna be, it ain't gonna be no quick trip.
Yeah.
Talking about this location?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be, I mean, you got a quick trip and a racetrack that's kind of interesting in those. And I mean, I don't have any idea what size the actual building would be, but then like if you read in there about the floor space being 85%, I mean, that part you'd have to, I don't know if that's still in with convenience stores too, or how that works. I know it is with grocery stores.
That's
isn't
to
it?
keep it from being a liquor
Yeah,
store or
that's-
just a beer store. It has to be, like a Quick Trip doesn't sell more than 15% alcohol in their floor space. They just got the coolers, I would presume. And
Typical,
same thing with the Walmarts and,
Typical racetrack, QT will go on 2 acres.
yeah, but how many square feet would the facility be?
5,000, 7,500. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a prohibition against subdividing that lot?
Mm,
The reason I'm asking is, why couldn't you take the right-hand side of that lot or take a triangle there, put it in a separate corporate entity, put your building far to the left so that the entity that owns the land where the alcohol is being sold is then the distance you need to be away from it?
well, it's still, you did exactly what my first initial was. It doesn't matter because of the way the law reads, even though there's a spot of land in between, if it's still less than 200 yards from property line to property line, even if you're crossing another piece of property, it still stops it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said it would be 300 to 400 yards away
No,
where it would be
if you
built.
build it and you drove out, like if you used what's called the most direct route, means the way you would drive, then you went from like entrance to entrance, then you would probably be. But if you go where the current law is, even if I subdivided that and say it was on the other side, then it would still be 66 yards. Well, I mean, probably a little bit further, but it wouldn't be, I see what you're saying now. It may be, you may get 200 there. I see what you're saying, if you cut it in 2.5. But the only problem is if they come there, they want to cock it a little bit sideways or something of that nature, because every one of them's going to have a little different of a drawing. And like I said, this is just one situation. We've got 3 up there. We've got one in Whitfield County, where, like I said, across the road, it's a school property, but it's not even, kids are not even there, but it's still school-owned property. And then you got a grocery store on the other side of 286 once you go on down through there, next to the high school. And the high school, it's a quarter mile off the road, and they're wanting to put it on the back side of, it's 285 acres. They're wanting to put it on the back side over there, and it's the same deal. But I understand what you're saying, if you put land in between it, that might work. But
The way I read it is it's only a 100-yard buffer if it's distilled spirits. I mean, 200 yards if distilled spirits, but 100 yards if it's wine and beer.
I've read it that way, and then I read it the other way. Department of Revenue's been involved with it. They read it as even as beer and wine, because we could get away with the 100 yards, especially subdividing it, and that's kind of where that conversation came in to start with. But then we were told it was 200 yards. So that's the reason I was kind of trying to define it, just let the locals be able to move it any way they wanted to, and that way everybody was kind of on the same page.
Kennedy, look with me, line 14, front page. Any distilled spirits enter within 100 yards of any church building or 200 yards of any school building. Then in subsection B on the top of the next page, it said any wine or malt beverages within 100 yards of any school building. So it sounds like it's 100 yards for wine or malt beverages and 200 yards for distilled spirits. So all you need is 34 yards here.
Just tell them to put the building to the northeast of that quadrant.
Then we're done. We don't have to.
Or sell off a little bit of the chunk right there and get your distance.
We didn't go to meddling now, fellas.
Well, that's why we had hearing only today, because we're trying to work with you.
Let's talk. I'm starting to get thirsty.
That's good enough. I don't see any other questions, and we're at our time, but thank you for the education.
Thank y'all.
We're working with you best we can. We're going to try to see if we can make this restrictive so we don't create a dilemma statewide where any local government can have stores adjacent to their schools if they choose to do so. I don't think that's the will of the state, but I recognize the unique economic circumstances in your neck of the woods. We'll help you if we can find a way here.
All right. Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all's help.
We are going to adjourn. I'm going to put a heads up out to people. I am planning Senator Gooch just left me, so I may take him off the list. Let me see my list for Tuesday. I can't remember these bills by numbers, but I was trying to give some folks a heads up. Do you got a list of what I said we're going to do on Tuesday? Nope. Okay. All right. Be looking for our agenda, but I'm going to be handling a right-of-way bill on Tuesday, and we're going to listen to COAM hearing only on Thursday of next week. There's pretty comprehensive legislation. I want us to be educated on that before we act. Any other House members that have bills you want us to hear, make sure you send me a letter, and I'll do that. I expect we're more than likely going to hear 601, which deals with Epidiolex, which is a cannabidiol oil, however you pronounce that, for young children. Might hear that Tuesday as well, just to let people out there in the world know so they can come here to testify if they need to. With that, we are adjourned.